Hercules from Stories of Old Greece and Rome, public domain reading. One of the most difficult of Hercules' labors was to procure the golden apples that Hesperides, the daughters of Hesperios, the god of the west, guarded very jealously. At the foot of the tree coiled a fierce dragon whose nostrils poured out fire, and whose deadly breath would have slain any robber, even if he had escaped the dragon's claws. As Hercules did not know in what part of the great glowing west the garden of Hesperides lay, he wandered many miles before he met with anyone who could direct him where to go. The first help he received was from the nymphs of the Eridanos river, who were sporting on the river bank and called to Hercules to come and join in their games. Much as he would have liked to rest, the hero dared not tarry, but he begged the friendly nymphs to tell him the way to the garden of Hesperides. They could not help him, but they advised him to go to old Proteus, the ancient of the deep, who could tell him whatever he wished to know better than anyone else. And so Hercules went down to the seashore and found the hoary god asleep in his cool green cave. Knowing the old man's wiles, the hero grasped him firmly and held him fast throughout all the bewildering transformations that he made, by which he sought to frighten away the stranger. At last, finding himself securely caught, the wizard assumed his original form and asked Hercules what it was that he wished to know. The hero stated his errand, and Proteus told him, in words that never deceive, that he must find the giant Atlas, who alone knew where the garden of Hesperides lay. Hercules then started again on his search, and in the course of his journey came to the Caucasus Mountains, where he found Prometheus, the stealer of the sacred fire, bound with his adamantine chains to the rock, while a vulture feasted daily on his liver. Hercules killed the foul bird, broke the chains, and set Prometheus free, and in return for his deliverance, the grateful Titan directed his rescuer where to find the giant Atlas. Following Prometheus's advice, Hercules traveled straightaway to Africa, and on the way he passed through the land of the Pygmies, a tiny race of warriors who wage continual warfare with neighboring tribes, and especially with their deadly enemies, the cranes. Hercules was not aware that he had reached the country of the Pygmies, but one day, when he had fallen asleep from weariness, he was wakened by sharp prickings over his body, and looking around he saw a host of diminutive men attacking him with their tiny weapons. The hero laughed at these brave efforts, caught up a few of the doughty little warriors, and wrapping them in his lion's skin, carried them back with him to the court of Eurystheus. As he journeyed through Africa in search of Atlas, Hercules came to the country of Antiochus, a mighty giant and wrestler, and the son of Terra, the earth. All strangers who came into the land were obliged to wrestle with him, and if they were defeated, they were immediately killed, as no one had ever overcome Antiochus. He had brought an untimely death on many a brave hero. But Hercules was eager to defeat him and avenge the unknown dead. As soon as they had grappled for the first struggle, the slayer of the Hydra knew that he had met more than his equal in strength, and for a long time they wrestled, Antiochus growing stronger after each fall, and Hercules growing fainter from each additional blow of the giant's hands. Again and again the undaunted hero threw his adversary to the ground, but Antiochus rose with redoubled vigor and continued the unequal contest. Then, all at once, Hercules remembered the tale he had once heard of a giant who drew strength from his mother earth, and believing that this was the case with Antiochus, he made a mighty effort and lifted the giant from the ground. Antaeus struggled to get to his feet again on the earth, but Hercules kept him in the air and held him there until he felt the powerful body of Antaeus beginning to weaken. Little by little the miraculous strength oozed away, and soon Antaeus grew so weak that Hercules easily crushed the limp form with his hands. The hero then traveled on in search of Atlas, whom he finally found standing on the coast of Africa, with the great weight of the heavens resting on his broad shoulders. As Hercules looked up at the enormous figure, which reached so far into the clouds that nothing could be seen above his waist, he noticed that the forest had grown so thick and tall all around that only a glimpse of the giant's huge legs could be seen through the heavy foliage. As the hero stood watching this figure that for centuries had stood here in obedience to the divine command of Jupiter, he saw dark clouds beginning to gather about the giant's head, and soon a storm broke over the sea and land. Amid the beating of the rain and the crash of the thunder, Hercules thought that he heard the voice of Atlas speaking to him, but it might have only been a peal of thunder. When the storm was over and the mists rolled away from the earth, Hercules saw the head of Atlas through rifts in the scurrying clouds. The snow-white hair gave the giant's face a benign look as it fell thick and white over the stooping shoulders that bore so terrible a weight. In a voice that he strove hard to make gentle, Atlas asked the hero what he was seeking, and Hercules told him that he had come to get some of the golden apples from the garden of Hesperides. Atlas laughed at these words, and his great shoulders shook with so much merriment that a few of the stars fell out of their places. He then told Hercules that such was a feat that was impossible, even to so great a hero, but that if someone would take the heavens from his shoulders for just a few hours, he himself would get the apples for Hercules. Hercules was delighted with this offer of assistance and agreed to take the giant's burden, while the latter went off on his friendly errand. Very carefully, Atlas transferred the heavens to the shoulders of Hercules, and then sped westward to the garden of Hesperides. The hero was a bit troubled when he saw Atlas shake his huge shoulders and stretch himself in delight at his freedom, for it would be strange indeed if the giant were ready to resume his burden after having tasted the joy of liberty. With some anxiety, Hercules watched him step into the sea that came only to his knees, though he had waded out a mile from the shore. As Atlas went deeper and deeper into the waves, at first his huge bulk looked like a cliff among the horizon, but soon it dwindled into a mere speck and was presently lost to view. How long he stood holding the heavens Hercules would never know, but he found himself growing very weary of this burden and anxious over Atlas's long absence. Suddenly he saw a dark spot on the horizon, and he knew that it was the giant returning. It had not been a difficult task for Atlas to reach the garden, or to pluck the golden apples from the carefully guarded tree, and Hercules, delighted with the giant's success, thanked him for his trouble and asked him politely to take the sky again from his shoulders, for the journey back to the court of Eurystheus was a long one. Now Atlas had no desire to stand for another dozen centuries with his old burden, and seeing a good opportunity of getting rid of it forever, he told Hercules that he would carry the apples to Eurystheus himself, and meanwhile the hero could keep the heavens supported until Atlas returned. Pretending that he was quite satisfied with this arrangement, Hercules bade the giant goodbye, and then hastily asked him to wait a moment while he made a pad for his shoulders to ease the weight of the unaccustomed burden. The unsuspicious giant good-naturedly agreed to this, and took the heavens from Hercules. But instead of making a cushion, the hero picked up the golden apples, which Atlas had dropped on resuming this burden, and started again for his own country, leaving the giant to stand on the seashore forever, or until the pitying gods should release him. The 12th and last labor of Hercules was to bring from Hades the three-headed dog, Cerberus. With the help of Mercury and Minerva, he descended into the dreaded realm of Pluto and begged that grim monarch to let him take Cerberus into the upper world. Pluto was not willing at first to lose the guardian of his gates even for a short time, but at length he consented to let Hercules do as he desired, on condition that Cerberus should not be bound or any weapons used against him. And so the fierce three-headed dog was carried, snarling and struggling in the hero's strong arms. And when the pair approached the throne of Eurystheus, the horror-struck monarch implored Hercules to take the monster back to Hades as quickly as possible, for the sight of its dripping jaws, from which oozed the deadly nightshade, so terrified Eurystheus that he sought refuge in a huge jar, and would not come out until his courtiers assured him that Cerberus was safely out of the country.